Growing food in cool, temperate areas usually includes a vegetable garden, often includes berry plants and a fruit tree or two. Why not add nut trees to the mix with fast-producing hazelnut bushes? I'm really glad I did. Hi, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. The first of my hazelnut shrubs were planted in 2018 with 2 right near my kitchen garden close to the house. This was followed by 2 more when my top swale was dug in 2019. It took 4 years for production to begin. 2022 saw the first nuts appear on my original plantings, and sure enough, in 2023, nuts were produced on my swale bushes. Compare this with my almond trees, walnut trees and the macadamias. No production as yet. I'm still waiting. If you have a large property and want to fill it with food-producing plants, think hazelnuts. They should provide energy-dense food long before your other nut trees decide to kick in. If you have limited space and have to be selective, 2 hazelnut bushes may be the answer. They are not a huge plant like a walnut tree, but still give plenty of rewards in the form of these delicious nuts. It's been 8 years now since first planting my trees, and last autumn I was able to turn some of my harvest into a delicious chocolate Rocky Road treat for Easter, 50% of which were my nuts, which made an amazing chocolate, better than store-bought. Let's start with the basics. Hazelnuts, or Corylus avellana, are naturally adapted to cool, temperate regions. They need a period of winter dormancy to set fruit, and if you live in snow or frosty areas, you are actually in the prime zone. Not all hazels are created equal. If you live in cool, temperate zones, then you need varieties that are cold hardy, able to withstand temperatures down to -15 degrees Celsius or lower. They need to be late blooming. This is crucial as early spring blooms can be killed by a late frost, wiping out the crop. This is what actually happens here with my almond trees. Where I am, it doesn't get too cold. The worst it's been has probably been about -5 degrees Celsius, and it hasn't affected any of the flowers on these plants or the subsequent crops. But if you do live in colder areas, that's something to consider. And you need varieties that can survive the cold and are late bloomers, such as Jefferson or Hall's Giant. They bloom later in the season, giving them a better chance to survive the late spring frosts. So always check the chilling hours required for the variety that you plan to plant, but generally the longer the winter cold, the better the dormancy cycle is established. Here's the secret that most beginners miss. Hazelnut trees are self-sterile, which means that one plant on its own will not produce a crop. You need 2 varieties that are compatible, which bloom around the same time to cross-pollinate. If you just have one variety, they'll produce an empty tree, whereas if you have 2 compatible varieties, you'll get a harvest. I have 4 varieties here. Cosford and Wanless Pride were my first trees, with Red Aveline and Barcelona the 2 I've planted on my swales. All of these trees, with the exception of the Barcelona, have produced well. Pollen is carried by the wind and can travel up to 30 metres or 100 feet, so keep this in mind when planting different varieties. The mistake I made with this Barcelona is planting it too far away from its pollinator varieties, Cosford and Wanless Pride, my original trees. Make sure the varieties you choose have overlapping bloom times. If one blooms 2 weeks earlier than the other, you might miss the cross-pollination window. Hazelnuts hate wet feet. In a cool, temperate climate, rainfall is often abundant. If your soil is heavy clay, your roots will rot. You need well-drained soil. If you have heavy clay, you must plant on raised mounds or beds to improve drainage. In my case, these first trees are on a slight slope, which drains excess water away. And in my swale, the trees are planted on a mound. The swale itself holds water, but sinks it deep into the soil, enough to water the plants on the berm, but not to oversoak them. I generally don't think about pH of the soil, preferring to focus on compost or just mulching chop and drop style, which you can see in one of my earlier videos featuring the 2 swale trees. I've also done a video comparing soil in the swale with areas that have been mulched in this way with the areas that I have neglected. The soil certainly improves with lots of organic material on top. Once your trees are established, they are tough, but young trees and late spring blooms are vulnerable. In winter, you could consider protecting the trees from harsh winds and deer or other browsing animals. I don't have deer to worry about, but if my cows get out, they usually make a beeline for my fruit or nut trees. I have planted 3 additional hazelnuts on the lower slope of my top swale and haven't felt the need to protect them. The winds aren't too strong, and luckily no animals have found the need to browse them. In spring, you could consider covering your flowers with a frost protection cloth. My winters aren't that cold, so I don't feel the need to do that. Here I've got one of my macadamias that I do cover over because they are quite sensitive to the cold. But in my location, the hazelnuts are really quite hardy and I don't feel the need to do that. Another thing to consider is wildlife. Birds and squirrels love fresh nuts. Occasionally, the local king parrots here and the bush rats have eaten the developing nuts, but it hasn't been too much of an issue. Net the crop if these are a problem in your area. Harvest usually happens in late summer to early autumn. The nuts are ready when the husks turn brown and the nuts fall naturally, or when you can easily shake them off. After harvest, they must be dried thoroughly before storage to prevent mould. You can store them in a cool, dry, dark place with good ventilation as is for up to about a year, but I have shelled mine and stored in the freezer for quick, easy use. I love hazelnuts so much that even though I've already got 7 bushes in the ground, I'm happy to be adding in 2 more. These are plants that I've dug up from around my existing plants and are varieties I already have, so there'll be no cross-pollination issues. It doesn't fix my Barcelona problem. I'll buy another compatible variety like Hall's Giant and plant it close by to fix that problem. There is an area at the end of my bottom swale to plant these hazelnuts. The walnuts on either side will not be an issue as the hazelnut plants can tolerate the walnuts well, where other plants will fail to thrive. After watering these plants in, I just mulch it with a bit of grass and then follow it up with a bit of cut up acacia. And that should get these plants going perfectly. These 2 plants are planted on my lower swale or my bottom swale, so it's up on a berm, so they're not going to ever get waterlogged. The water will drain away. The soil is pretty good, although as you can see it's quite grassy. But as these plants grow, I will continue to chop and drop some of the support trees that are nearby and just continuing to mulch them to keep all of those grasses at bay. And eventually, as the tree grows, they will be suppressed. And they're also in a position that don't get hit with strong winds. The westerly winds come across and sort of skip this bit down here. It goes up above them, so I'm not anticipating any damage from winds. But what I do expect from these 2 trees is really good growth over the next 4 years and then a harvest of hazelnuts. Growing hazelnuts in a cool, temperate climate is very rewarding. By choosing the right variety, a partner for pollination, careful soil building with regular mulching, you can turn your cold winters into a delicious harvest. I would love to know if you're planning to plant some hazelnuts, what varieties you're planning to plant, and where you are located. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't. Thanks so much for watching and happy growing.